It's like this, man. You like a butterfly flapping his wings deep down in the forest, man. It's gonna cause a tree fall like 5,000 miles away, man. There ain't nobody seeing nobody. Man, see, like, you don't even know, man. It's like you're born into this world, man. And you got like that, man. That's the wind, man. Or like a dang candle, man. It don't matter, man. These old time.
All right, Bog Beef. Welcome back to Jay Burden Show. How you doing, man?
Awesome.
Yeah, man. So I wanted to have you back on, first of all, because I checked our last episode and realized it'd been like 18 months since the last time we talked. But also, as I'm sure you're no doubt aware, Trump's BBB bill has passed. And it was sort of a political circus, getting it actually over the line. And there was lots of, blackpilling about certain parts of it. But there were two things that jumped out at me, and I thought I'd bring you on to discuss them, both because they play into our mutual interests, and also because I think they're an example of political patronage, right? Rewarding our friends. And so, obviously, the one that I think we should start with is cafe regulations, corporate average fuel economy, right? Basically, some stuff Obama just kind of pulled out of his ass, so to speak, to cut down on fuel emissions. Those have been gutted, right? There's no longer a penalty for violating them. And so I'm curious, if you could, you want to just explain why we actually care about cafe regulations and, what that means for guys like us?
So, I'll just say why I care before we get started here. So, I own right now. Normally you hear right now from like a redneck that normally is like, are you currently employed? Hey man, right now, I don't know. It's not, I've always got cars coming and going, but there's two cars that I've had a very long time. One, and right now, and these cars will stay with me forever. And I love them. And one of the reasons I love them is that one of them has something that you can't get past 1975, except for maybe one exception, is it has a big block, has a 440. And the other one has an inline six. It's a truck. Now, there were inline six trucks in the 80s. That's when my truck was made. But if you're a car guy, first off, these two things are things that I love these things, and we can't have them anymore. Detroit cannot give these to us anymore because of corporate cafe regulations. This is something that has existed in some form or another since 1975. If even a lot of people know, like a lot there were bad. There's years of cars where people just you don't even remember the kind of, like, everybody knows, like, the muscle cars, late 60s and 1970, 71. 72 was when the gas crisis hit. That was basically the gas crisis hit in 1972. Gas was super expensive. Nobody could afford to drive a car with a big motor. So that was when they got this cafe stuff passed in 1974 or something like that. You'll see a lot of bad bills and stuff were passed in that period from 1971 to 74 period. But anyways, it passes in 1974, 75, and nobody really cared because gas was so expensive that it didn't matter. That's when you see what we call the malaise years, because at that point, like, Detroit wasn't really ready for this. They didn't have we didn't have designs that would go like this. So they were just slapping these. This is when you'd have 500 cubic inch big block Cadillacs with like a 2-barrel carburetor and all these like awful emissions equipment, like the old school emissions equipment. And like, it was just terrible. It was awful. Go ahead.
As much as I hate to say it, this is sort of where you get the meme about American cars having giant engines with no power, where that comes from. Right. And obviously it was massively popularized by programs like Top Gear, who, like, look, they're tongue in cheek. They know what they're doing. But to go from, again, engines that are, anywhere from, 350 to, all the way up to a 500 cubic inch engine, right? Making serious power, like even power we look at now and say like, that's a fast car. Overnight to, completely destroyed, choked engines, which are, and I can't do the conversion in my head, but we're talking like 7.5 liter Cadillac engines that are making, 140 horsepower in a, something the size of, your living room, right? It's like, well, the charge is American V8s don't make power. And the correct answer is, well, which American V8s are you talking about? Right? Sorry, I'll throw it back to you.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. It wasn't their fault. Detroit had a lot of very smart people. If you go look at the old photos, the old, back then it wasn't just GM. Back then, Pontiac had their own engines, Chevrolet had their own engines. Detroit was awesome. By the way, it was the richest city in America too.
Even to the point where you have, I think it was Oldsmobile, right? That had a turboprop car, that literally ran on like a jet engine.
The turbine, yeah, like a chopper or whatever. They were doing amazing things. Like what people think of go watch Jay Leno's video on the Corvair. I mean, the Corvair was advanced as anything that Europe had. Or go look at AMC had this car. It's not the AMX, but it was like call it the AMX3 or something like that. It looks like a Lamborghini, and it's like made in it looks like a Countach, and it's made in like 68 or something like that. They were doing amazing things, and then the government stepped in. By the way, of course, everyone knows what happened to Corvair, and they threw this stuff on there. They weren't ready. They still had all these big cars and stuff, so they put this stuff on there. That's when we get the Malaysia years. And the first sort of spark of where we're at now was it, I don't know, late. I can't remember exactly which year, but there was one year. This was This was one of these years where like Chevy didn't even make a Corvette, which that's a big deal. And you have like, oh God, I mean, it was bad. These were years that no one can remember any cars. People were driving stuff like celebrities and I kind of like Chevette or whatever, but none of them lasted anymore. But they were bad. This is when the Japanese stepped in. But the first sort of spark of ingenuity you saw of getting around the government stuff. You ever heard of a Dodge Little Red Express?
No, I'm not familiar.
So it's the fastest vehicle that Chrysler made at that time, which they looked at these emission standards. They were like, we cannot make a fast car, but we can make a fast truck, because one of the biggest loophole is always been that they just can't apply this stuff to trucks in the same way, because the world revolves around trucks everywhere. And in Europe and everywhere in the entire world has to have trucks, and trucks have to work. And so they couldn't apply this stuff to trucks. That's what I'm saying. I have a big block in a car. If you want a big block in a car made after 1971, you could only get it in a truck, Chevy 454. But so that was when they made Little Express. It was a 360, and they put some cool stuff on. It was faster than any car they made. They couldn't make a car as fast because it was illegal. And to not get into the whole history of cafe or whatever, is that, we see back and forth, we see Republican administrations relax at some blah, blah, blah. And then basically George W. Bush goes along with the libs in terms of increasing it. And Trump first time around lowers it some, but then like the first, like, in my opinion, like the first real big thing that happens is that, Biden basically just goes overdrive. He basically, I mean, I don't know if you remember, Biden basically told Detroit, like, there's no point in even researching any more internal combustion engines. Like, you guys need to just go electric all the way, and we need to be all electric by this many years. And the CAFE standards were increased to like just obscenely high.
Well, and this is where you saw a lot of it was kind of conspiratard stuff, but the whole like build back better agenda, right? The whole like you will own nothing and be happy sort of stuff. And one of the things about electric vehicles, there are two things I want to get across. The first of which is that they're not really a real product. They don't exist in the same way that, your television or, any other product you buy. They're heavily subsidized, both on a consumer level, right? Like how much you would pay for one, but also on the back end, right? Because these cafe regulations, if you violated them, you had to buy credits, and you could buy credits from the manufacturers of electric vehicles. So not only was the government basically paying you to buy one, then paying the companies to make them, but then also demanding that companies that make normal gas cars also pay them, right? It was basically a massive shakedown.
Absolutely. I saw you did an episode recently about Elon Musk's new party. I really don't think it's a coincidence that you'd have somebody that's the richest man in the world, depending on what day it is, somewhere between 60 and 75% of his net wealth is in Tesla stock. And the Trump administration, from my perspective, has basically decided we're done with this EV mandate stuff. It's the people. It's not popular, by the way. The people, or at least the people who support Trump, generally, some of them might want an electric car, but they don't like the mandate and they don't like these incentives. That's going to heavily affect the net wealth of the current richest man in the world.
Well, and to the point of, of the viability of the America Party, that their asset is basically Elon Musk can bankroll their party. And look, like he's worth, depending on, who you ask, $300 to $400 billion, which is quite a lot of money. And okay, I don't know what the budget for the DNC is. Honestly, I don't know how much it costs to run a political party, but it's probably less than, a couple $1 billion a year. And obviously, 400 billion is a lot to pull from. But if all of a sudden 70% of your net worth is being attacked, right? Because Tesla's valuation is down already due to just social pressure. But, you have basically the incentive to buy those cars going down. And, one of the other things that's specific to Tesla is that, it's been forever since I did anything with finance, but there's this idea of fundamental analysis, right? Which is basically there are formulas that will tell you how much a company should be worth and how much their stock should be worth. Mm-hmm. And according to that, Tesla should not be worth anywhere near what it historically was. It didn't make sense. But Tesla was basically selling people a bill of goods that said, well, we aren't making money now, or we aren't making enough money now, but in the future, right? It was all predicated on this idea of, exponential growth. So you see this in tech all the time. The idea is, yeah, sure, XYZ tech company isn't, the AI companies are a great example, aren't on paper, they shouldn't be worth anything. They're not making money. But the idea is you want to be on the ground floor of the next Google, the next Microsoft, right? Where you can see a 2,000% return. And Tesla, especially when Musk was sort of Mr. Reddit, right? He had an immense amount of, shall we say, like hype from those kind of people. His stock was crazy overvalued because, he is, a modern day, Howard Hughes. He's going to take us to Mars. And look, he still may do that. But that store of wealth was never really justified in things he actually made, right? Sorry, Bog Beef, just a little bit of a rant there. I'll give it back to you.
No, you're right on the money. And, well, I mean, his stock it's about half what it was worth a year ago. And again, the most of his wealth is that. I guarantee it's not Neuralink or Twitter. And so that's going, I think that has a lot to do with the whole America Party. But so, this EV mandate, the Biden administration was all in on, by the way, which I don't know, that going back to the whole thing with Elon, that does make that even more bizarre. But regardless, So the weird, I guess well, first off, I did some calling around. I tried to see if I could find out anything. And I was able to learn. So one thing that I guess this will be obvious to a lot of people, but and you mentioned it already, is that a bill was not passed to get rid of cafe. This was passed under budget reconciliation, which you can do with just a simple majority in the Senate. It's only supposed to deal with raising or spending money. It's not supposed to make new policy. They just zeroed out the fines for not complying. Now, by the way, this is 2025. You know what I mean? Like, it's like ways you're supposed to or whatever. I mean, I don't know if that matters much.
We're well into the late stage empire where it's basically a smash and grab at this point. I think even conservatives have sort of realized what time it is there.
Yeah. And so the Democrats, they used reconciliation to pass the quote unquote, the Inflation Reduction Act. That's in quotes. It's not an act. In 2022, so they were able to tax methane emissions from oil and gas operations, give hundreds of millions of dollars in sticks and carrots for climate boondoggles. But they couldn't actually write a bill or do any new regulations or say anything was illegal. So, I mean, we learned from the best. You know what I mean? Trump. So I think it's pretty clear that Trump has staked out his claim here is with the EV stuff. I think we've seen this from state governments that are controlled by Republicans. We've seen them going to, the big. I don't know if you would get into the BlackRock thing. I don't want to get into that too deep right now, but BlackRock, their whole deal was like they're like this. They're supposed to just you give them $100 and they take $99.95 and split your money up and put it into they create the index fund or whatever. They're supposed to just charge like a nothing fee, and they don't manage your retirement fund or whatever. They're just supposed to break it out like that, and they're not supposed to like make decisions, whatever. And they got around this, but with this, they're like, what were they trying to like? What was the main thing that BlackRock tries to do? They try to do this ESG thing, which is again. We're back to this EV stuff. So there's a lot of, powerful people with lots of money that are trying to, by the way, it's important to say in BlackRock's case, it's not their money. It's not their money. And people say that BlackRock owns, I hate BlackRock. We're proud to be sponsored by a guy who is the number one BlackRock hater in the world. But like, people give them, you're giving them too much respect by saying, they own half the stocks. They dice up people's retirements and stuff in that. That's not their money. But anyways, they tried to massage this and get around and start making decisions with this money, which they're not supposed to. They'd be regulated a different way if they did want to start like, oh, we want to invest to help out the environment stuff. They'd be regulated in a different way. So, but we've seen state governments, Republicans sort of go take them to court and stuff. We're starting to see gains like this. So we're seeing real war. Republican Party. I know it's hard to get Republicans to do anything. They're doing this. They're going to war with this EV mandate and this ESG bullshit. By the way, I mean, like, does anybody in 2025 think that you're gonna do something for global warming by putting the screws to the Germans anymore or Americans? Like, we're just we're nothing. We don't pollute anywhere near as much as countries like China and India and stuff.
I mean, look, giving India access to the internet, I think, has taken a major swing at that narrative, right? Because it's like, wait a minute, I'm not allowed to have plastic straws, but they've got like a poop festival, Like,
yeah.
This doesn't seem quite fair. But the reason that cafe matters and is sort of a example of, our friends being rewarded, right, is that often, and you see this especially from the kind of urbanist leftists who I view as just the lowest of the low, right? It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, I get it. You just want to be in charge of everything, and you got a college degree letting you play pretend like you're playing like Sim City in real life, and we should just do whatever you say because there's a computer model that you yourself coded, right? People are scum. But one of the things you often see is complaints about the size of American vehicles. And a large part of that has to do with an earlier instantiation of these CAFE regulations. That, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dog Beef, but the situation that I understand it, Obama comes out with these super aggressive, fuel economy requirements, and effectively they're just not possible, specifically with regards to trucks. So they carve out a little bit of a loophole, right? They say, well, dependent on sort of the size and the footprint of your vehicle, you have to, hold to these standards a little less, right? They're loosened a little bit. So obviously the incentive is to make everything giant. And again, we're not quite done pillorying Obama yet because he ruined this country. Your crazy uncle was right directionally at the very least. But when you combine that with cash for clunkers, right, which decimated the used car market, you have a situation where new cars have to be bigger and more complex, read more expensive. Older, cheap used cars were completely gotten rid of. And so the average price of a vehicle climbs, whether you want to buy new or used. As another consequence, as these vehicles become bigger, more expensive, and more technologically complex, the new vehicles, this creates a positive, price pressure on used cars. I'm sure right, what, pre-OBD2 or OBD cars cost. There's a price premium. Similarly, if you can skirt around these sort of, technological solutions, quote unquote, now 10, 15 years later, they're worth more. Like, dude, like, have you checked the prices on like used Toyotas? They're insane. Right?
Yes.
But believe me, I know. And so point is, right, what that has done is for average Americans, particularly kind of like, the kind of people who buy used cars and used trucks, it's become a major, major part of your cost of living. So effectively, right, like the average used car in relation to your income in the last 50 years has gone up by around 4 to 6 times, right? It is proportionately much, much more expensive to buy a new car now than it was 50 years ago. And look, the same thing has happened to used cars. Obviously, there was sort of this, massive spike in demand over COVID, but prices haven't returned to pre-existing levels. And so if the answer coming from politicians is, this isn't a problem for me, it's a solution, buy one of my friends, effectively iPhones on wheels at, an exorbitant price, which will be effectively useless after its battery cell goes dead. That's a massive problem. And look, like if we want, small, simple, affordable new cars again, this CAFE regulation is one of the things that has to go. And honestly, it's great news that it was done away with because I didn't even know that was on the table.
It's wonderful. And again, one of the reasons I brought up the whole thing in 75 that Detroit wasn't ready for that was that there's no way they could have been ready for this. I mean, they didn't know who was going to win the election, even if I'm sure that the Trump campaign, these things, I'm sure these have already been talked to with the auto workers union, stuff like that. But they didn't know he was going to win. They didn't know if the beautiful bill could be passed. They didn't know it's going to be in the bill, how you do it, etc. And so there's no way they're ready for this. Now, there's a lot of great things you went over. I just went and looked back to find this old. I assume probably one of the reasons why you invited me on to talk about this because I used to post about this a lot. I looked up this old thread I posted. I knew it would be a good hook because it's something you could say to Americans to piss them off. I posted. It was just a short video, like a little TikTok style thing. It wasn't TikTok, but it was from a car dealership in Dubai. and it was for a brand new Land Cruiser Series 70, but it's not what we would call Land Cruiser. It's just a light truck. It's just a small truck. By the way, you reference, I don't think anything has gone up outside of Porsches, that's kind of a specialized market. Would be like a Blade 80s Toyota truck with a 22R motor. Like,
no joke, you could have, if you had invested in T100s instead of gold, back in the 80s, you'd be the richest man alive. Or you could have even driven them the whole time and still made just an obscene amount of money.
Yes, and this is one of the things that I don't know if liberals are just stupid, or I don't. Maybe they just don't care about this or whatever. But
I think a large part is that they like making chuds miserable. Like, I
think
that's a big part of it. There's just some guy at a think tank at all moments dreaming up how to make your life inconvenient.
Yeah. But one of the things they will say is they're like, oh, these Republicans, they want these big trucks. That's all they want. No, I mean, you look at the used car market. I mean, outside of like where you need one, like if you need to pull a trailer or something, you need a big old dually diesel or something. But no, it's the little trucks. I mean, I didn't get ripped off, but I paid a decent amount of money for my 80s Ford short bed standard cab. And
dude, a Tacoma costs more than a Cummins turbo diesel, dependent, right? A year.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know as much about diesels, but I know that we did a whole episode on how DC destroyed diesels. Basically, Caterpillar is the diesel company. Like, they make diesels for like ships and like mining equipment stuff, and they made the best they have specific, they call it like over the road truck, basically 18 wheelers. They made the best diesel truck for 18 wheelers. It was like if you had 18 wheeler, you wanted this motor. You could put it in different trucks, having a Kenworth or a Mack or whatever. You want this diesel. And Detroit, DC, they gave them all these like these emissions regulations stuff, and they worked with it for like 6 months. Like, yeah, you know what, this isn't worth it to us. We're just going to get out of this market. We can't make a motor that works that does this, and we got other business we can do. We make diesels for other things, and kiss our ass. We're not gonna play this.
Well, you see this, I mean, even on the sort of like open market side of it, right? So for a while before it was tragically taken out in a 90-mile-an-hour collision with a deer, I drove a 2006 TDI diesel, right? 5-speed, great car. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of a dinosaur in the sense that it was one of the last vehicles ever sold with mechanical fuel injection. So just incredibly reliable, right? That 1.9 motor just does not break. And one of the interesting things is when I started looking for them, not only is the price absolutely insane, but I was sort of I couldn't figure out why. It's like, why is there this huge jump for this particular year? And basically it's because the emissions they put on even small capacity diesels, like you'd see in a 4-door sedan, it completely choked them, right? The great example is DEF, right? Diesel exhaust fluid, and EGR, exhaust gas recirculation. So basically for the non-mechanically inclined, EGR is quite literally the stupidest idea in the world. Basically what they say is you need to run your exhaust gases back through the engine again. Well, why is that? Well, some of the fuel isn't burnt, right? A certain small percentage of it. And if you run it back through, more of that fuel will be burnt, right? It decreases, from a certain perspective, emissions, but it also chokes the engine, right? It'd be the same thing, right? If you put on a paper bag or a plastic bag over your head, right? You are breathing in your own emissions. You'll choke and die. And it destroys these engines. And you'll see there's sort of a cottage industry bog beef I'm sure you've seen on YouTube of diesel mechanics complaining about modern diesels. And what they'll do is they'll break apart an engine that has and this has gotten worse as the years have gone on, right? That has, 20,000 miles on it, right? Nothing, especially for, diesel engines, which 10, 20 years ago were routinely hitting 1 million miles. And you look at it and it looks like the bottom of your charcoal grill, right? Just covered in this, hard carbon because it's being forced to recirculate it, which decreases the life of the engine. It decreases how well it runs. And DEF is a similar thing, right? It's this fluid that neutralizes, I know nothing about chemistry, as you could probably tell, neutralizes certain emissions we don't like. It turns into, water, comes out. And not only did they make this a requirement, your car has to have it, and it's an expensive thing to keep buying all the time in addition to fuel and other stuff. But they've decided to say, well, if you don't have DEF, if you're, as has happened to me, right, if you're in a giant turbo diesel truck towing, 60,000 pounds, for example, in traffic, sucking through DEF, your car just won't run. You're out of luck. Sorry, bud. And if you decide, I don't want that, I would like to take that off. Well, guess what? That's a crime. As, Banks Power and a couple other shops that were basically, pulling these systems out to make the engine actually run well. It's the definition of just an odious law. But sorry, Bog Beef, I've interrupted you for like the 6th time in a row. But as you can tell, I get a little fired up about this.
No, you're cooking, man. So yeah, I was going to ask, I've looked in one of these EGR valves, is working on a Honda or something, and it was just the grossest thing I've ever seen. And you're just like, oh my God, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And I guess, like, ultimately, when you add all this stuff up, you get like where we're at in 2025 is just a freak show of vehicle. What the libs, they'll always say this thing like, oh, these Republicans, they just want these big trucks. That's all they want. And it's like, there's always been guys that wanted big trucks. There were always less of them than wanted smaller trucks. But regardless, why? Because you brought up the footprint. So the footprint's one of these things, but at the end of the day, you get this humongous, that big vehicle because of the footprint. They're ugly as sin, but they're all bulbous. I don't know if you've heard about the guy who designed BMWs like the past 40 years or whatever. He quit. He was like, I can't make a vehicle that looks good anymore. It's not going to happen.
It looks like if they call it the belt line, right? Which is the line on a car that runs at the bottom of the glass. And we were actually talking about this earlier before we started rolling. Here's a great example if you want to see the difference. Look at just a Datsun 240Z, and then look at the new Nissan Z. I can't remember what the code is they came up for it, but it's the same silhouette, right? Obviously inspired by the older car. But if you look at the belt line, right, that glass line, it looks like the pants people wore in the 50s, right? Where it's basically like, almost up to the bottom of their rib cage. It's stupid. And obviously that's done for other regulations, but when you combine just the size of these vehicles and the weird proportions, it's like, it's no wonder that all these things have turned into soulless appliances. It's like, you can't make something look good with those sort of proportions.
My favorite part, and you don't see them on absolutely every 240, but the 240s, they got the little, it's small, but the little tasteful chrome bumper up front. There's no more chrome bumpers. By the way, for a long time, it's not my favorite car thing, but car designers, they'd always say the most beautiful car ever made was it was this one Jaguar. I can't.
Oh, it's the E-Type coupe. Which, funny story, I've accidentally broken one, but I've told that before.
Was it the electrical system? I've heard they're pretty easy to.
So they have of course it's British, right? So all the steel is made of. It's just horrible, and really beautiful car. It's not quite like Nismo Millennium Jade, but it's really close to it, right? Just a cool, like, icy metallic E-Type coupe. Rare is incredibly rare, incredibly valuable. And the collection I was working at was going to show this. So I was, being a good worker, I was going to clean the windows. And of course, if you're going to clean the windows right, you take the mirror, or you take the wipers off. And I pulled the middle of the 3 mirrors off as the guy was basically walking into the room, and it just exploded. It was like if you ever put together an AR lower and shot one of your detent pens, where it just goes into the ether, you never see it again.
There's probably 7 or 8 in the corners of my room somewhere.
It was exactly that experience. And when you're in college, all right, like you're making poverty wages, and you've broken something that's worth more than all the money you've ever made in your life. It's not a good day. I'll leave it at that. But sorry, the Jaguar E-Type, prettiest car in the world.
Yeah, and I don't know. By the way, the 240 does remind me of it, but the main thing I think, the first thing I think about when I think of that thing is that a beautiful chrome bumper up there. I mean, like it's so funny is that you don't even know where to start with this stuff. But by the way, chrome Democrats have been getting chrome out. Like the only I don't know if chrome is now totally banned from California yet.
I know this from working at an old car collection where we'd have to get stuff re-chromed. You have to ship it to Mexico now. It's just not something that can be done here.
Yeah, so I love guitars, and there's people can tell, like, so all the old guitars, they look beautiful, and the new ones, they look like plastic. And the reason why is that the new ones, they have this polymer paint or whatever. It's the eco-safe paint, and because they make the fenders in California or whatever, but I think it's pretty much everywhere in the United States now, is that you can't have the lacquer paint if it's made in America. So they just,
this is also why all your cars, like the clear coat, peels off, right? Because the old lacquer paints, which someone who's done at least a moderate amount in paint and body, are just a dream to work with.
Yep,
age great, they last forever. They will give you, according to the state of California, about 50 different types of cancer. But, we don't care about that. But point is, right, that's another example of, like, it's just something we can't do here anymore. And it's another way in which, like, the burden is foisted onto you, the end consumer.
Yeah. And by the way, like, so you can pay, if you pay the big money to Fender, if you pay the $5,000 or whatever, they'll give you a lacquer paint job. They just ship it right over the border to Tijuana, and Fender's got a plant there in Tijuana. They spray it there and they send it right back to California. But so at the end of the day, you get this just freak show of vehicle. There's no chrome. The paint sucks. You can't see out of them anymore because of these. You got to have all these stupid. You have to have an airbag in every crevice of the thing. Anytime any safety measure is invented, they mandate it. They just say, okay, everyone has to have it. And this is not this low. Not everybody can afford or wants something that's loaded to the gills. That's why, but when I posted that little truck in Dubai or whatever, I said, you're an American, you can't have this. You can't have this. It was a 2024, whatever. It was brand new. And they haven't changed it in 40 years. It's the same truck. By the way, you know how inexpensive that makes parts? If you start thinking about stuff like right to repair, these kinds of things, any shop can work on that. The parts are very inexpensive. They've made the same one. In Australia, you can still, somehow Australia's a first world country. You can still buy these trucks, and there's a waiting list every year. It's the most popular truck everywhere in the world except for the United States, because the United States, we're huge pussies and we can't handle the 70 series Land Cruiser. Everywhere else in the world, they love this truck. Greatest truck ever.
Well, and to your point about, not everyone wants a loaded to the gills vehicle. There's sort of been a bit of a creep with the definition of luxury that I think is interesting, because I actually like old luxury cars.
Yeah.
We'll go back to like old Toyotas and Lexuses, because this is a convenient example to hand. That is a luxury car in the sense that it is a very well made, comfortable car, right? You'll get leather seats. You'll have a wood steering wheel, maybe. Man, the ride's real good. But other than that, you don't have a lot of stuff on it. You don't have, I'm sure you remember when Rolls did the like galaxy ceiling, right? Where you could pay, an absurd amount of money to have like a map of the stars that would glow at night, attached to the ceiling of your Rolls Royce, or, it doesn't have like an aroma dispenser or, mood specific lighting or any of one of these kind of like showy, chintzy nonsense options. But that's a big change, right? The definition of luxury from being, if you bought, for instance, like an expensive pair of leather boots, right? They don't have like a bunch of gizmos on them, but they're comfortable. They're made of high quality components and they're inspected to last. And I think that that's another element as well, which is, cars have become disposable, right? They've become similar to a lot of modern appliances where it is expected that you will simply finance a new one in 5 to 10 years. And I think one of the other parts about this that I notice is that as the price for cars have crept up, the target consumer has shifted too. Effectively, new cars are advertised and designed for baby boomers, right? They are the ones who can afford new car prices. And so you've seen cars cater to older drivers, right? Everything is easy to get in and out of now, right? Everything is a crossover. Everything is designed for the elderly. And the market segment that really existed up until kind of mid-Obama for like starter cars, right? Like a GTI or something like that, or like a Scion TC, right? That front wheel drive coupe is another example, where it's like, these aren't expensive cars, but with your first real job, right? Like you're out of school, or, you've got like a decent, trade job, you could buy one, right? Like a GTI used to cost you like $19,000, and they were fun, relatively practical, bare bones, right? Didn't have a lot of stuff on them, but you could, enter into that market, be an adult. And as that target consumer has shifted older and older and older, not only has the price increased, but also what sort of things do they put in cars now, right? It's no longer designed for, like GM was good about this, that, they had different sub brands for every stage in your life, right? You're young, you might start out in a Chevy. Then, things you develop in middle age, you end up in a Buick. And, if things go great, you're driving a Cadillac. Whereas now it's like, you're pretty much only left with the back half of that market. And the cars for poor people, right, basically don't exist anymore.
Yeah. By the way, these, the way they would do that is that the Oldsmobile and the Buick, whatever, you'd get 3 or 4 more inches of wheelbase or whatever, and then the Cadillac that would have the longest wheelbase, and the longer wheelbase, you'd have that smoother ride, that boulevard ride. But so in my work, there's one guy with a new Mustang, and he's in his 70s, and part of that, I don't want to blame Detroit for that, because they can't make a stripped down sports car right now, like it's illegal. But and also, like, you only have so many credits for like, it costs you have to, or you can also just straight up like pay the fine or whatever. That's what, like, Lamborghini does or whatever. But like, they're incentivized to not make any like, all the hot cars that people think about and stuff were stripped down. Like, people think, when the people think of the hot cars of the late 60s and early 70s, they had radio delete and stuff like that. Now, like, and so now if you go buy a brand new Mustang, it's got heated seats, leather, everything. It's got all this crap in there, and they're incentivized to do that. It's not their fault. They can't really, because of the cafe things, hopefully that's over. They can't do that. I don't even think you can buy a V6 Mustang anymore. Like that I don't think that exists anymore, because it just wastes these credits or whatever. And so, that's bullshit. Like, sorry, but like, Mustangs are not supposed to be for people. I'm saying there's nothing wrong with that. I'd like to drive a Mustang in my 70s or whatever, but that can't, like, if that's the target market for your sports cars. Well, like I said, this all goes back to this freak show that we've created with these regulations that just stacked on top of each other and the paint and this and that, and the hood. The hood's got all this crap with the pedestrian regulations now, and you can't see out of it, and they're ugly, and they're expensive and they have this giant footprint. And at the end of the day, like, you just get a piece of just pure crap. And it's time to stop. Hopefully we can get a reset on this kind of stuff.
Well, and honestly, and after this, I want to swap into another part of the BBB that's a somewhat similar situation. But a large part of it is, when you shift the consumer, the target consumer, you shift the perception, right? So for instance, look, like, Harleys used to be cool. Like, that used to be a thing that, like, bad guys drove. And now it's like your dentist owns a Harley. Like, it's for accountants, right? Rich old people. And I mean, look, like, dude, I'm not sure if you've ever checked the prices for new Harleys. It'll give you a heart attack, right? These things are absurdly expensive. And with it, it's lost that sort of cool outlaw edge to it, right? All it is basically a smaller RV. And yeah, it's really been one of the sad things to see a lot of these, legacy brands sort of taint themselves. Like, obviously all of the, the old sports car manufacturers have sort of cucked and done both sedans and then crossovers. But I mean, I feel like there's no better example of exactly what we're talking about than the Mustang Mach-E, which is basically a Honda CR-V with a Mustang bumper bolted to the front of it, only electric. It is ugly as sin. Like, it is an affront to God and Henry Ford. And I agree with you. If this could be a reset, this is huge. And if we start getting Land Cruiser Series 70s, dude, I'm going to be the first person in line, because that is a truck that a lot of people need. And to your point about the market, look at how much Japanese K trucks cost. Those things go for like 20 grand, literally 25-year-old, micro trucks from Japan that you can't really get parts for, but because they fill a needed spot in the market, right? A place that people are desperate to fill. Like anything else, the price has gone to the moon on them. But
I live next to a dive shop, and they use one, and it's real handy for what they do, just bringing the tanks down to the beach or whatever. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to mention. So going back to the politics of this. So Congress used the Congressional Review Act, which again only needs a simple majority. These are these hacks we're doing because Congress just doesn't function anymore because of whatever this stuff with the filibuster and all this crap like that. They use that to nuke the Biden's EPA grant on its way out the door of a preemption waiver to allow California to straight up ban internal combustion car sales by 2035. Democrats are like seriously asshurt about that, basically because they said that like you again, like their argument is you can't use congressional review to do that. But like finally we've gotten to the place where Republicans like, yeah, we don't care anymore. We're just gonna do it.
My answer to that is like, yeah, go cry me a river. Like, okay, Democrats suddenly care about the Constitution again. Like, who cares?
Yeah, for people that follow politics, I mean, this is how now that it took a little while for Republicans to be like, okay, hey, I can actually do this. This works. This feels good. I don't mind this. This is how business is going to be done now. I mean, like first off, that's awesome that again, we haven't been in a place where cafe hasn't existed since 1975. Now that the regulations are gone, if these companies are able to act as if and charge ahead with this, that's going to be that's just it's awesome that we're able to now do things like this, and that these major companies will act on it. It's a pretty big white pill. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to mention is the changes that happened to the NFA. So for those who, I'll give sort of an abbreviated history. FDR is the devil incarnate, and when the NFA, the National Firearms Act, was being drawn up, the real goal of it was to ban handguns, right? To ban all sorts of stuff. And as a vestigial part of that, they basically said, well, if we want to get rid of handguns, we should probably also ban the ability to, turn a rifle or a shotgun into a handgun, right? Like you've seen these, they call them like Obres, right? Which is sort of a bolt action rifle cut down to be a really bad, I'm watching my language here, pistol. So they left that in. It becomes the law of the land. The pistol ban does not. And the consequences for violating this law, which include any shotgun or rifle with a barrel under first 18, then 16 inches, it's real deal prison time, right? It's like 25 years and a crazy fine. As a vestigial thing, right? It doesn't really matter, but that has been used as a hammer to go after people like us, right? Randy Weaver is a great example. The feds say, hey, take a hacksaw to the shotgun barrel. He does it. And they basically say, look, we're going to slap you with, a federal prison, like a felony conviction, if you don't do this for us. And what they've basically done is they didn't modify the law, but traditionally to be on the NFA or to have an NFA item, which includes, suppressors, machine guns, short barreled rifles or short barreled shotguns, you got to pay the government $200. And in their infinite wisdom, FDR set it as a flat $200, which obviously in the 30s was prohibitively expensive. It was an absurd amount of money. Thanks to the wonders of inflation, it's still $200, which is less of a sting. But what they did is they basically waived the fee, right? No tax. And so obviously there will be some lawfare going into that. But this is another example of, a reward for our guys, right? The kind of guys who care about guns and, want to do interesting things with them. And it's a huge bone for us, another white pill. So sorry, that was sort of a 3x speed recounting of that Bog Beef, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. No,
yeah, that's right. And I'm never going to tell the gun guys to chill out, because I think if I'm part of any part of the right, it's the 2A community, and being loud and letting politicians know if you piss us off, that you're going to be out of office. That's a good part of what we're about. However, there were a lot of guys mad about that the NFA wasn't repealed. Well, we don't have the votes to repeal it anyway, but we can. This is the same thing with the cafe thing. Like you can't really get mad at Trump for being like, hey, you didn't sign a bill that got rid of the NFA. Well, they don't have the votes to do that, but they can defund it. And as someone who has, I've been stuck 3 times on NFA stamps. I've never heard of anyone who actually got checked. But everything I have is legal, and I have paperwork for everything. That is not a joke. Sorry, just wanted to say that. I'll throw it back to you, Bog Beef. I'm sorry. No, I mean, I have 3 NFA stamps, and I don't know what they're going to do with this, but one of them I waited 1.5 years to get my silencer. Same, yeah. I don't know what they'll do with that, but yeah. This opens up new avenues for us. And by the way, the Forgotten Weapons guy's got a great video on the whole NFA Act. How it just made it it's one of these things. It literally makes no sense. You have a rifle. It's 13.5 inches. That's illegal, but a pistol's not. I mean, if a pistol is what is very easily concealable, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, anyways, I don't know. It's awesome. And again, this went through the same way. I wonder what else we could do with this kind of stuff. This is the new meta. I mean, I heard from guys in DC, I did some calling around. They told me this is one way we can do things now. Well, and the reason it matters, even if you're not a fellow gun autist, right, is that this is a stick to beat people with. The punishment for it is so absurd, right? It's a very serious felony, and it's so easy to be entrapped into
that it's sort of one of the Fed's favorite tools to ruin someone's day, right? You know, they pay some informant to say, hey, can you put this stock on this gun? And bam, in a minute, right, you've just committed a big boy felony. And I'll put it this way, the old joke, right, is that you can tell someone's racial group by which 3-letter agency they hate the most. And for the white boys, right, it's the ATF.
Absolutely.
And it's largely because it's one of those things where, I mean, look, there's a lot of felonies that, like, no one accidentally kicks over a bank, right? Like, you know what you're doing. But this is something that is very easy to accidentally do, because every individual piece is completely legal. You could buy, many of them without even a background check off the internet. But if you assemble them in the wrong way, or if they want to entrap you into assembling these things in the wrong way, well, you're looking at like 20 years in like pound you in the ass prison, right? Like it is a huge stick for basically, federal law enforcement to screw over guys like us.
Yeah. Meanwhile, TikTok rappers post themselves with Glock switches all day, all day. No one. How many of these guys have ever been arrested? Not like apparently everybody in Chicago has a Glock switch.
Well, look, it's not exactly like edifying or great entertainment, but if you just go onto the YouTube Shorts feature and look up Glock switches, I'll put it this way: it's more effective than like reading the last 30 years of Steve Saylor, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. By the way, I hope if someone's trying to cap me, they're trying to get me with a fully automatic pistol.
Yeah, exactly. It's 30 rounds in a fraction of a second in like a 90-degree cone of fire. You're pretty good there, right?
Yeah, and shooting a pistol is hard. By the way, people don't realize shooting a pistol is difficult. Like if you want to be accurate, like anything beyond like 5 yards or whatever, you have to practice. Like, you literally have to. It's not easy. And you can put a switch on that. Like you're not hitting. You're some random gangbang or whatever. You're not out of the range. Pressing your own brass, pressing your own bullets and stuff like that. Like you got to be that kind of guy or a cop, because cops. There was response to these shootouts or whatever. Cops started now cops shoot a lot. I don't know what that is, but pistol.
I see it at like, because I'll go to, a few like IDPA matches a year. And you see it, it's probably 20-30% law enforcement. And look, man, like just constitutionally, I don't really like cops,
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in cars, you generally don't. But like, you ever seen that YouTube channel Police Activity before?
I've been this one, the oldest thing our shows. We always tell people they should watch that channel. I think everyone should watch it.
It's fascinating, right? Because you're getting, it's just unedited body cam footage, which by the way is widely variable. Because you will see like, some crooked cop in Kentucky, roughing some guy up, for something stupid. But also like these ambush attacks or, freak shootouts that pop out of nowhere. I mean, I'll put it this way. If I was signed up to do that, I'd be training too, because they're terrifying, man.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Like, we don't hear this kind of stuff anymore. Like, this used to be this just pounding thing that we heard every day. And like, we would hear stuff about like, libs they would go AWOL, like, they want to do like, they have these community reviews and stuff. And like the whole idea of like, doing watching one of the, like these wrestling matches between a cop and a junkie or whatever, watching it like it's a Zapruder film, making sure the cop behaved like 100% perfectly while he's like WWF fighting like some guy on the street or whatever. Like, you're insane. And, people say, well, they should be like good at fighting. Like, how many, like, how many people are cops in America? How many people do you need to be cops in America? Like what, like a million people, 500,000 people, whatever. You can't hire 500,000 UFC wrestlers to be police officers. That's insane.
Well, I'll put it this way, man. I go to a martial arts gym literally 4 times a week, right? And wrestle with big dudes. That sounded straighter in my head than it came out, but you know what? We'll go with it. It's hard. It's really hard, especially if you've got a size disadvantage. Like if you're wrestling a dude who's hopped up on like adrenaline or PCP or whatever, who wants to cave your head in with a rock, it's like, I'll put it this way. I'm at least okay at grappling, and I carry a gun everywhere I go, right? Because it's like, it's unrealistic. And I think it comes from, the biggest part is that just Sam Francis is entirely correct about anarcho-tyranny, right? They view crime as a solution, not a problem. But I think another part of it is that like these people have obviously never been in any sort of physical altercation in their life. Because like, dude, fighting kind of sucks, you know? Like you can get real hurt real bad. And especially if you're not expecting it, you know, as you see in this body cam footage where you're basically like doing a wellness check and then some like, you know, Elder Scrolls looking dude pops out of the woodwork with a knife and decides to like take you out. It's like, I don't know. It's very clearly not an opinion born of experience.
This is super interesting. So I'll have a current debate going on with my co-host, whatever, about this. So my fraternity, we had lots of guys that were big into these UFC type stuff, whatever. One of them had been on the Ultimate Fighter. Like they were doing semi-pro fights or whatever. I think one of them went to America Top Team, which was a big deal back then, or whatever. They might be nothing now, but these guys were doing this stuff all the time, and we're frat boys, so we're going out and like, you know, looking for trouble or whatever. But my whole debate with my co-host or whatever is like, so I knew guys that were like amazing at fighting. Like we would, like one of the games we would play or whatever is like, you know, we get drunk or whatever. And like, the rest of us, like we would fight them in the backyard and they wouldn't like punch us back. We could do anything to them. And like, guys, they're out there spectating or whatever, would just literally call out holds to put us in, and they could just do anything to us. So these guys, they did this all day. Nonetheless, my whole thing I was saying is like, even guys that know how to fight, you know, we would get into situations and stuff. Even if they're going to fight, even if you know you're going to fight, there's always this, it's not like hesitancy, but you know, you're getting into something serious there. It's like a hesitancy thing. And that women don't have this. Women love to fight. They love to fight. I don't know if you've seen like the popularity of like women's high school wrestling and women in UFC. They just love to fight. If you go to a college football game or a pro game or something like that, you're probably going to see women fight. They love to fight.
Yeah, I mean, you ever seen World Star Hip Hop? Right? They made a whole empire off of it, right?
Yeah, and like I don't know what that is. Like, you know, it could be all kinds of theories or whatever. You see this in domestic abuse rates with like gay men versus lesbians. Lesbians, they just beat the smack out of each other. Women just love to fight. They enjoy it. They love the biting and the kicking and the scratching and the conflict. And men are just like, you know, men grumble, and it's like, you know, okay, we're going to get in this. I don't want to get in this, but okay. Like there's that ramp up or whatever. Women just love to fight.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, there's an interesting dynamic. And obviously like alcohol or substances sort of shift this, but there is I have been in a fight and I don't want to do it again thought process, you know, of like, ooh, this like, dude, I don't want some dude like blasting a double leg on concrete. That's going to suck. And I think that's another part of it too, which is like, unless you're sort of like a David Allen Coe, like won every fight I ever fought kind of guy, there is this like, there's at least a slight chance here that I get my ass kicked, and it's not a particularly pleasant experience that I think is also part of that hesitancy, if you see what I'm getting at.
Yeah, there's so many things that can go wrong. I mean, first off, if you don't fight, like if you don't go to these, you know, jujitsu gym, whatever, all the time, even if you're in good shape, people don't realize how fast you get tired. you get tired really fast
Dude,
if
just
you're
try,
fighting.
like here's an example. You can do this at home. Just stand in like a boxing guard for like 2-3 minutes. Dude, your lats, your shoulders will be on fire if you've never done it before.
Well, I understand Butterbean was like a pretty good, was a quite excellent boxer, but like for like 90 seconds. Like
Yeah, the classic example is Bob Sapp, right? The super juiced up dude from Pride, like in 2004 or whatever. 360, looks like the Incredible Hulk. And all of his fights were like 90 seconds. And if you lasted through that 90 seconds, you were good. But if he got you, you were just turned into paste.
Yeah, but these guys are like, whatever. But if you're looking at just even top heavyweights or whatever, it really takes no time at all. I mean, once you add in like grappling and stuff like that, you are toast in just a short amount of time. Plus, you can just catch one of those, you can just catch a lucky shot or whatever. And you're just, you're like at half, not even you get knocked out or whatever. You just catch or even, you get stung on the nose or something like that. Or you just get that, you get that drunkenness kind of state or whatever. Like, man, anything can happen.
Well, and one other thing, and there's a great police activity footage. It's like 18 minutes long a couple weeks ago of this like dude having some sort of crisis, and he stops on the side of the road, engages in a fist fight with a cop, steals his keys, drives off. And at this point, right, like he's got the keys to a police car. There's a rifle in the back, all kinds of stuff that you don't want just some crazy guy doing. And he's driving down the road at 100 miles an hour with the sirens on, having an unbroken conversation with Jesus, right? And heavy scare quotes there. And it's like, yeah, I'll be honest. If I've got, a gun on me, let alone what I got in the car, like me taking that chance of getting chinned. And now there's some dude with at least 2 guns. It's, I'll put it this way. I see why they default to the mag dump. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, one thing that you do see there, and I'm going back to the original topic we were talking about with this, was just that, like, in my opinion, like cops basically in the 80s turned pistols into like, I don't know if you say like they just turned them into actual weapons. When you would see like, from what I understand, like the amount of people that were killed in World War II by pistols is like extremely low. And if you've ever tried to shoot a pistol accurately at any kind of distance, like even like 50 feet or something like that, you realize and then you shoot a rifle. You can teach an idiot to shoot a rifle accurately, like in a day. I mean, it's night and day, the difference or whatever. And I don't know if you've seen some of the incredible shots that regularly go down on that chin or whatever, but the whole point is cops can't walk around with a rifle. Things got more serious in the 80s with crack and stuff like that. Cops started getting their rounds up. This is where people started working on these different stances and stuff. And I don't know, like they made this thing into a real weapon when I don't really think pistols really were. Pistols were for like capping someone that wasn't paying attention or whatever at 5 yards or before that.
Oh yeah, well, and you see that and unfortunately, Bugbeak, we gotta wrap up. I got a guest who's waiting, but you see that in the evolution of even like the 1911 platform. Like one of my favorite things to do is to look back at sort of like old firearms advertisements in magazines, right? And you see that this power creep, right, from like a basic GI spec 1911, which has, I mean, even to call them sights is sort of generous, right? Like the Army listed the effective range as 7 yards, which is not a lot. And then you're getting into like all these guys figuring out how to optimize it with like, Novak sights, longer sight radius, all this stuff is basically pushing the envelope of what you can do with a pistol, because fundamentally it's a very limited thing, right? It's sort of like, like a dagger from a previous era of like, okay, yeah, sure, if you're in a pinch, it's cool. If you're ever expecting to get into something nasty, you want something a little bit bigger. And you can sort of, if you're the kind of guy who's interested in this, go back to, gun magazines from the 90s, 80s, 70s and back and sort of see that development in real time. I don't know. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, a pistol was something an officer carried around as a sign of their station.
100%. Well, dude, this has been a ton of fun. Where can people find more of you and your work?
We just got on Substack like the other day, so I don't know remember the address. We're on patreon.com/goodoldboys, GODOLBOYZ. I'm on Twitter at bog_beef. And yeah, check us out. We have a podcast. We do a weekly show, and then we do interviews, etc.
Well, sure thing, man. I'll be sure to link that. Y'all's work is excellent. Highly recommend it. As far as my stuff, the Jay Burden Show is available on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you want to listen to podcasts. If you want the episodes early and ad-free, you're going to have to throw me a few bucks, which you can do on Substack, Patreon, Subscribestar, or Gumroad. Check out our sponsor, Axios Remote Fitness and Coaching. Again, Bog Beef, I appreciate it. And everyone at home, keep your head up. Life can't last forever. Good night.